Spectre Vision Radio.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
This is Somewhere in the Skies with Ryan Sprague.
Welcome to Somewhere in the Skies, and I cannot believe I'm saying this. Welcome, first-time guest Rich Hoffman to the show. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, it's good to see you, Ryan. We finally get to meet. We've talked for years.
I know, we were talking off air. Our ships have crossed so many times, and we just weren't able to make it happen. But I couldn't think of a better time, Rich, and I want to kind of dive into that a little later with you of where we are now in the UFO landscape, UFO conversation, because gosh, I know you've been doing this for a while. Even I've been doing this for almost 25 years now at this point, and it was not like it is today. So
Yeah.
exciting in many different ways for sure, as we'll dig into. But I would like to start from the beginning. Now I know a lot of our viewers and listeners probably know you from The Proof Is Out There and all of the lectures and stuff that you've done throughout the years and your work with MUFON and SCU and we'll get into all that. But I want to go back to the very beginning, your Peter Parker moment when you got bit by the spider. It became the superhero UFO researcher you are. So yeah, what kind of got you on this path, interested in UFOs and everything?
Well, it's a little bit unorthodox in the sense that it's not like I had a sighting and then that's what convinced me. It was a situation where for me, it was like I had an 8th grade science class and I was late to the class and the teacher had passed out a list of like topics you had to choose to do a 10-minute presentation on, right? So 10-minute, wow, I got to get up and do a 10-minute presentation. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Anyway, the only thing that was on the list that nobody put their name next to was the thing called UFOs. And I had no idea what I put my name next to. And I went up after the class and I asked my teacher, my 8th grade science teacher, I said, what is a UFO? And he said, unidentified flying object. I said, well, what's that? You know, and he said something like the effect, well, you ever seen flying saucers or stuff like that on TV or something like that? I said, yeah, I've heard of flying saucers. But that's kind of like science fiction, isn't it? You know, it's like, no, what do you mean? Anyway, he told me just go on and do your study and research and come back and do your 10-minute. Well, I kind of like just blew it off. I think I might have like looked up something. I ended up finding probably a book like My Trip to Venus or something like that.
Oh,
and,
wow.
You know, and then I talked about, you know, that some people believe that they're seeing things and, you know, that there's really probably nothing to it, you know, and it's more like science fiction-y time. Anyway, I just bombed my way through the entire subject. And then my teacher, who knew a lot about it, and that's why he probably put it on the list, started asking me questions. It's like, well, what about jet pursuits and them shooting at them? I'm going like, what book did you read?
Yeah.
Anyway, I got a D on the report. You know, at least he didn't give me at least he didn't fail me. But at least the fact that I got up and did it, you know, was sufficient. And so I did that. And then I went home that evening and Walter Cronkite was on the news talking about the Lonnie Zamora case in April 24th, 1964. And I don't know if you know that story, but it was allegedly this police officer, you know, sees these two small beings next to a craft and the craft shoots up and there was some scorched areas and stuff like that in the sage and stuff like that. It was like there were footprints and going like, wow, that was curious, you know, that something like that happened in the, you know, and here's a sounds pretty official to me and like it's legit. And a couple days later, my aunt was going into a bookstore downtown, and I went with her. And I went up and I asked the agent behind the counter. I said, "Well, do you have any books on UFOs?" And they said, "Yeah, there's something over here." And they pointed me over, and the book was the Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by former Project Blue Book lead Captain Edward Ruppelt, right? And so I'm now the first sentence in the book is about them shooting at an object. I'm going like, that must have been the book that my teacher read.
Yeah.
Anyway, I read it from front to back. I became obsessed. I might have read it maybe 10 times front to back. I was like, wow, this is incredible. But the most significant thing for me was I was living in Dayton, Ohio, and right up the road was Project Blue Book, which is where the Project Blue Book was, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking like, wow, this is right here in the city of Dayton, Ohio. And, I just became now, as an 8th grader, I became obsessed with the whole topic. I couldn't get enough of it. I was doing newspaper clippings. I was finding any magazine articles I could. I got as many books as I could probably find on the topic. And, just began collecting. I got, like everything I could find on the subject. And then the next thing I know, I began talking around the city of Dayton and giving lectures on the topic, as if like I think I was about 15 years old at the time.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm approaching adult groups, like the Sertomas Club, the Lions Club, and everybody else, talking about the subject of UFOs. And then I had a situation where I got a call from a producer at the local TV station, and it was the producer for Phil Donahue. And so I ended up being on a Phil Donahue's show at age 15, talking about the subject of UFOs.
Wow.
Well, I became the UFO guy in Dayton, Ohio, pretty quickly. I mean, he's the guy you go to. So now I'm finding myself being called day or night about going out and checking on somebody's sighting. And I'm going like, well, I still have school to do, but after school, I would be going out and doing investigations, and then knowing how to do an investigation. I found out about the Air Force report forms, and I used an Air Force report form to be able to do it. It just snowballed. I was now going out and doing a lot of investigations around the 1965 because there was a flap going on, and in 1973 we had another flap and stuff like that. And I became overwhelmed with just doing this, and I had to get other people doing it. So I started training classes in my garage, of all things, to teach people how to help me to do investigations. And we went on from there, grew. I became a part of the Ohio UFO Investigators League. It's an organization. I was the director of investigations for them. I found out about an organization that was in Seguin, Illinois. It was called the Midwest UFO Network, which later became the Mutual UFO Network.
Right.
And I joined them, and I became the state section director around Dayton. And then now I'm in charge of all investigations for that area. And then, it kept snowballing, from there. So I've been at this for now 62 years. And
that's incredible.
And in fact, the other wild thing, Ryan, is a lot of people aren't, we're not aware of it, but I would be out on a case and I would have a Blue Book guy doing the same case. And so we would connect notes, and say, well, what do you think about that? What do you think about this? And then I got hooked into the people at the base doing Project Blue Book. So I actually now got to go and meet some of the people at Project Blue Book as well. And we just, kept in touch. In fact, I was given a phone number that I could call up the radar approach control on cases I'd be on, and they would confirm that whether there's any aircraft or something in the area. So now I've got the Air Force working with me on that stuff. And so it was really wild, just a wild ride.
Yeah, just running like parallel with Project Blue Book investigators. That must have been, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Did you ever get to meet Hynek? I gotta ask.
Oh yeah, I mean he would come to Dayton. I went to his lectures in Dayton, Ohio, that he did. I got to meet him, and then I also ended up going up to his house twice. in when he
Oh,
moved
okay.
to Evanston, Illinois. So I was up there. I met him and Mimi Hynek, his wife, and stuff like that. And in fact, Mark Rodiger was there one time, and so I met him. He's now the lead for Center for UFO Studies and took over
Mhm.
the lead for that. But bottom line is, and then Stanton Friedman was in the area in town talking, and I would run across Stanton when he would be in town, and I went up for the debriefing of the Larry Coyne case. That was the helicopter case
Oh, right.
in Ohio. And I just got to know all these different people that are now, of course, the old leaders and of course I'm the old leader now too, as some from respect. I got the gray hair to prove it. But bottom line is I just became connected to all these different people, and then I started going to the MUFON conferences and stuff like that. And then in 1978, I actually had the MUFON conference in Dayton, Ohio, and we had about 3,000 people that came to that conference. And that was the one that I had Hynek speaking, I had Donald Kehoe speaking, I had Leonard Stringfield speaking at. There was a Ray Blocher was there, and just a whole host of other people, and it was an incredible conference. That's at the time of the Close Encounters movie, so we actually played clips from the mothership coming in and stuff like that, and it was awesome. It was an
What
awesome
a
time.
time.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man. Um, okay. Well, so you mentioned in the evolution of your UFO
Yes.
investigations is astounding, to be honest. And that led you to working with MUFON. And I gotta ask, because I was going through your resume when it came to MUFON, and you worked with the STAR team. And
Well,
that's
I
an
was a STAR
interesting
team.
kind of thing.
I became the well. First off, let me explain. I was the
Yeah.
state director for Alabama and Mississippi.
Okay.
So I ran investigations in the two states, and then I talked to Jan Aldrich, who told me that he'd like to make me the deputy investigations. I was like the number two guy for all investigations across in MUFON, and so I became the deputy director of investigations. But that also, he wanted me to be the STAR team manager. So I became the STAR team manager, which now was like taking and looking at getting all the STAR team players to be able to go out and do a big time immediate study of any kind of objects that were out there, or if there was a landing, you're going to be on site within 24 hours and be out there doing the collections and stuff like that. So I kind of ran the STAR team as well.
Mhm.
And then I kind of got out of the investigations realm and became the director of special projects. And let me clarify that what that was. It was about bringing technology into our actually study. We were dealing with the fact that investigators would show up after the sighting happened, and now you're talking about a
Right.
past event. And it was important for us to get on the front side of that and start to get technology tools out to where we could actually have them in hotspots or do something with them in the context of collecting data. And so that was what I did as the deputy director of special projects as well.
Okay. Now, are there any I know a lot of these cases are confidential in terms of where they happened, names and dates and stuff like that sometimes. But
Yeah.
any cases that really stick out to you when you were working with and for the STAR team that you are your most memorable
Yeah,
ones?
well, I think that the one to me that stands out the most, I call this my aha moment. Okay,
Okay.
I had not seen any object or something like that, and
Mhm.
so I didn't have the luxury of having a UFO observation like a lot of people did and stuff like that. But anyway, I was out looking at a case in which there were UFOs the night before, and what you had was a situation where a farmer was looking out of his house and seeing that there was like a 70-foot area in the middle of his wheat crop that's completely gone.
Mm.
It's vape. It's gone. There's no
Mhm.
wheat, and it's a perfect circle, right? And so he basically called us up. We immediately got a team out and basically started to do all the measurements and checking out and plotting it. And you find that in the middle there was a central depression, and as you get out from that, And then you start to see, and by the way, there's no roots of the wheat 2 feet into the ground. And so it's like, what has it been vaporized or something like that? Where did all the wheat go? You'd had no evidence of the wheat that was there, where it was. And you're then looking and you see a swirl pattern, kind of like of a stub that's up out of the ground. And then in 70-foot in diameter area, there's a puffed wheat. The wheat actually had been heated to the point where it puffed.
Huh.
And you're going like, okay. And you're looking around and there's no evidence of anything, heavy equipment coming in. There's none of the other wheat in the middle of the field was damaged. And you're looking up, the only thing that it could do is come from above, right?
Yeah.
And so you're saying, well, okay, that's pretty weird. And you find microwave like radiation and stuff like that in some of our measures. Anyway, it was just an incredibly bizarre case. And it just made me aware that there is legitimately something again to this. And at that point, I didn't even have to see one to believe it. To me, it's a situation where I'm standing in this field and I'm saying, I believe it now. I can see that. And so, that's my aha moment that I talk about the most often. And again, it's just a very weird experience to be standing there and you're going like, you're just in shock. That something like that could happen. And yet it did,
Right. Wow. That is definitely an aha moment if I've heard one for sure. Man. So I want to talk before we get to current day with the
Sure.
SCU.
Oh, yeah.
You've had a lot of experience with defense contractor work, space flight centers as well.
Yep.
Tell us a little about that if you don't mind, and how that kind of probably, I would assume, butted up against your UFO work in some ways as well. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little about that?
Sure, no problem. When I was living, I left Dayton, Ohio, and moved to kind of like ended up in the DC area, and I started to go to work for what's called the Army Material Command. And if you look back and you find out where Project Blue Book was, it was within the Air Force Material Command.
Mhm.
I became interested in seeing if I could get into defense to basically see if I could learn anything about the subject of UFOs. In fact, I always had this like dream, if you would, that I wanted to be in charge of the UFO investigations and stuff like that for
Yeah.
the military. I thought that would be a really cool thing to do, right? So anyway, I got in as a contractor and I began teaching. I was in the IT field, so I was actually teaching them how to use Windows and everything else. That was a new thing coming out. Windows, wow. And so I ended up teaching them how to do that, and then I became the help desk manager. People would see the fact that I was, my offices were decked out with UFO paraphernalia, and because I was a contractor, it's not like that people like I wasn't actually a civilian in it. But I was like doing all this IT work and I was a contractor. And so consequently, people would come up to me and tell me their stories. And so I would have all these people walking up and telling their individual stories and stuff like that quietly. And I learned a lot from them in terms about what happens in some of the exercises that people were at. They would see triangular shaped craft, or they would be, and that would be watching what they were doing in the exercise. I'd be like, wow, that's pretty incredible. And then other kind of encounters that people were having and stuff like that. So I knew that a lot of these people that were civilians and stuff like that and military were reluctant to talk about it, but they saw me as somebody that they could talk to. And so anyway, I did that for a long time. I worked with the Army Material Command for like 30 years and just retired with them. Or at least from them, working with my companies that I've been involved in. I was in 10 companies during the contract periods. And so anyway, it's kind of like a wild story, but bottom line is I never had any. They actually jokingly called me the command ufologist. So anyway, something would come up and people would ask me, well, what do you think about this, Rich? What do you think about that? And so and then as I'm just about ready to retire last year, I actually got placed into, you remember all those New Jersey drones, right? So
Yeah.
All right. So I'm working with the Department of Defense now and the Army on actually implementing drone killing devices. So we were already putting out sensors on our critical military bases that would detect the objects or the drones if they were coming into our perimeters, because we were having that going on. There were a lot of perimeter breaches from drones, people flying drones in and stuff like that. So we needed to be able to detect them and put them in our perimeter, and also then have the means of knocking them out of the sky or finding out where the operator is and stuff like that. So we had we were starting to do that, and probably right now it's probably all of our critical bases by now. But anyway, they're putting those drone killing devices out. Well, that would be a great opportunity for you to be able to detect, if you couldn't knock it out of the sky, that it might be actual UFO,
Right.
as opposed to a drone, right? And
Right.
people are mixing drones and UFOs, and that's been a really wild thing. But anyway, that's kind of like what I got involved with. And of course, I'm a drone pilot, so I was very curious about where we're going with the advancement of drones. And I got to actually see a lot of briefings and stuff like that, of where our military organizations are actually putting and building drones that could do this or that, or drone killing devices that could do this or that. And it was really interesting. And sadly, I had to retire, but I needed to get out of it. But anyway, it was a cool subject to get into.
Yeah. It's so fascinating how you've been able to kind of this running theme of trying to pursue the truth of UFOs
Yes.
and the paths you took with your career choices.
Yeah,
I just find that so cool. Like that's the only way, they say if you want to change something, you got to do it from the inside. So I
that's
love
right.
that.
So the other thing, Ryan, was really cool was that all of our SCU conferences that we had were being held right outside the gate of the Redstone Arsenal here in town. So I
Wow.
intentionally did that so that we could actually start to get people from the base who are either at Marshall Space Flight Center or at some of the other facilities and stuff like that on the post to actually attend our conference, and it worked because we started getting a whole bunch of military people that were coming in and learning about and opening up about the subject.
Oh,
So it's
yeah,
very
again.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's, again, sort of vitally important, and we'll talk about that, with the SCU conference coming up because it's
Yeah,
literally trying to converge science with government,
sure.
with military, to try to understand these things and share data and all this stuff, so, I
Yep.
guess that does kinda bring us up to today, Rich. I want to give our audience, uh, kind of the teaser of what to expect with this upcoming SCU conference. But before we do that, let's let's break down what SCU is. We didn't even do that
Sure.
yet. You went from MUFON to SCU, a lot
Yep.
of things in between, a lot of things before and after. But yeah, what is the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies?
So
How'd that all start?
it's kind of started. Uh, if you recall the Aguadilla, Puerto Rico video,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
So we were at a MUFON conference, and Morgan Bell brought in and showed us a video clip of this object that was in Aguadilla that was an incredible. It was military, class, a military system, which was a very advanced camera and stuff like that, showing this object moving into Aguadilla, and it looked like it went out and into the water and then came up and splits into two. And we're like, wow, what is that? And it was rare for us to see anything in any kind of like in infrared. And so this is actually in infrared, and you're like saying like, well, this is interesting because it's showing the heat sources are around the object. It's showing that, and we just don't see that. We always see the blurry pictures that people do in the visible range
Hmm.
with their cameras and everything else and stuff like that. But this is our first look at infrared. And so we decided that we needed to break this down and look at every single frame. It had 7,027 frames to it, each individual pictures. And then we also went down to the level of looking at individual pixels to be able to measure, speed, distance, size, anything we could get. And we just took about a year and a half of doing just that, analyzing the heck out of this thing. we contacted about seeing if we could get the radar, and we finally did get the FAA to release radar from one station that was then in near southern Puerto Rico. And so it showed, even when we looked at it, it showed an object that was out in the water just north of where the airport is. And it was moving around and doing herky-jerky motions. It would be over here one minute, and then it would be over here the next sweep that would happen over here. And it was doing all these kind of motions, and even the speed of where it went from one place to another was already about 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, it was doing what it was doing. And it was like, you're going like, well, what the heck is that? And we had 50 hits of this strange object north of the water, and then suddenly no hits. Well, that's what matches up with when they turned on and they saw the object coming, looked like it was coming in toward the airport. Mm-hmm. And so, and this crew was taking off. This actually Homeland Security crew was actually taking off, and they saw it coming in from there, and they actually did a huge circle around it one time where they were watching this light as it was moving in from the water. And then what they did is, after they did that big sweep and they saw the object, the light went out, and now they've actually turned on the camera, and the light goes out, and now they turn on the camera, and they are starting to see this object, and they filmed it for 3 minutes and 54 seconds, and it just did what it did. And the important thing there is the fact that they turned on the camera because the light went out, and everybody wants to call it being the like the arrow, or calling it like sky lanterns and stuff like that. Well, I mean, it wouldn't stay up in the air if it didn't have if it wasn't lit. So that's bogus, I mean. And then the object speed that we measured was a lot different from what they were claiming. The distance that they had put it down to where that they saw it as being moving with the wind, and yet they don't know the distance from the aircraft to the object. And we saw that there was like a point where it goes behind a telephone pole, or a pole of some sort, and we got a measurement of the distance there. It goes behind some trees. It just kind of goes in between the trees and blots out, and so on and so forth. And so you have that kind of thing going on with the object, and then you have the splitting, and it heats up after it looks like it's going in the water, and then splits into two. So we were all moved. We started studying this thing, and we had to sign non-disclosure agreements saying that we wouldn't talk about it, even with MUFON, which put us in an awkward position since all of the 5 of us were with MUFON. Anyway, the bottom line was that we did our report. They actually approved it, and we could actually release it. And then we had to go explain to MUFON what had happened, and they were not happy about it. But I pointed out the fact that the actual case was actually reported to them, and they did not assign anybody to go in and investigate it. So it's their faux pas.
Yeah.
Anyway, bottom line there is that we carried on, and we decided to create an organization in 2017 after we saw that they were getting into this like strange stuff about, like Obama was on the moon, or wherever he was at, and there's a base on the moon, and there were purple aliens and stuff. Anyway, we scientists we had all departed. They said, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. It's ruining my credibility, and we don't want to do that. So we all kind of left, and we said, well, what can we do? We started this organization called Scientific Coalition for Ufology, actually. And so let's do that. And so we got it started, and then by 2018, we actually incorporated and started SCU, and we immediately went from 5 of us to 40 people to now we're over 400 people, wow. And we're global, and most all the people that are on board with us, there's probably about 25% of us that are all PhDs. And then advanced degrees on every other subject you can imagine. So we got doctors, physicists, we got psychologists. We have a whole plethora of disciplines and stuff, astronomers, and we're connected into that. And we're all doing studies now together. which is really cool because now you have all these different disciplines coming together to talk about something, And so we have different investigations and projects we're doing. Like we got people that were looking at the nuclear cases and stuff like that, and we're actually putting papers out on the nuclear cases. We've also got people that were looking at atmospheric effects that were noted by people. Like in the Nimitz case, you had the mirage-like effect that was around the Tic Tac.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at cases for those physical effects of the atmosphere. And now we're measuring that stuff. And so we're putting papers together on that. Whole host of things. We've got a quarterly newsletter we put out. We've been holding the conferences. This year it's in Toronto, but in the past years, a lot of them were here at Huntsville. And then we had some that were virtual. We had to cancel one in COVID, time period and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's been an ongoing thing. We've had a lot of great people that are presenting at these conferences. And in fact, we've got them all up on YouTube. If you want to go and take a look at the presentations, we've been posting them up on YouTube every year. And then we've got websites. We're also on all the social media sites, the Facebooks, the Reddits, the Instagram. We're on everything. So it's, we're everywhere. And we're excited. We've got a lot of great partners. We've been trying to build partnerships with other organizations out there that are that are doing UAP or whatever like that. And so like SUAPS is a part of we've been working with them, the Human Institute. I recently I did a technology conference where I've been promoting the use of and development of technology worldwide. And so bottom line is I've been working with the Human Institute. We are partnered with Marler out in he has a historical kind of thing going on. The records and research stuff, we're connected with them. So we've partnered with a lot of different organizations, Center for UFO Studies. We're connecting because we want to bring people together to talk about it, even if they are in a different organization. And so a lot of us are, a part of other organizations and helping each other out as well.
Yeah. The coalition, it's literally in the name. I love that. Yeah. Well, I was looking at the speakers list for your conference coming up in Toronto. So we'll give some details about that here. But yeah, it was such a wide array of disciplines, as you mentioned. I was so fascinated. You had like someone from the Galileo Project, someone that worked with, Gaipan at one point, and like bringing them all together to have these conversations. So I guess this would be a good time, Rich, to talk about the conference that's coming up in later in July. So tell us a little about, I want to get the subtitle here right, the synergy of science and government in UAP research. Now that's kind of where we're at today. You got Aero doing their thing within the Pentagon and Defense Department of War, whatever you want to call it. They're doing their own thing, but for that, you've also got citizen scientists doing things like what you guys are doing as well. And I know there've been meetings between the two, very shadowy meetings that the public doesn't know that much about. But it's good to know that the conversation is happening. But we're here to talk about SCU. So what is this conference coming up? And is there anyone you want to highlight really for us that's going to be speaking this year?
Yeah, I'm excited about a number of presenters and stuff like that, but we're trying to focus on what is the role of government in relationship to science and the study of UAP, right? Mm-hmm. So like, for example, we're starting off with Christopher Mellon talking about that aspect, right? We want to be able to say, well, how do we get government to be able to come and help science, and support science at the same time support science and study of UAP? And so that's kind of like our focus, if you would, for the overall arching conference. And so again, Chris Mellon's going to be setting the tone as our keynote speaker on the first day. And that I'm looking forward to that, by the way. Chris is an incredible person that's been very, very helpful. Even our report that we did on the Nimitz case, I think he was instrumental in being able to get that up on the Hill. And so that was exciting. The fact that he was able to do that for us and help support us. We've been also supporting him. Bottom line is that he'll be the presenter on the first night. And then we go into a whole plethora of all these other different presenters. And we've added in a different kind of feature this year that we didn't normally do. But we've got what they call these lightning talks, where so we can fit more presenters in. We've actually got them on a shorter period of time instead of an hour. They're going to be like maybe a 15-minute. Give us a 15-minute, and it's one after another. And so we've now got several presenters in a short period of time. You also have a lot of other presenters and the other thing is Randy Bostic. I don't know if you know Randy, but Randy was one of the scientists with Arrow. He's going to be presenting. And I got the chance to meet him in Dayton, Ohio. I was visiting family, and we went out and had lunch together and stuff like that. And he was pointing out the fact that, what he did and how he worked with the sensors and stuff like that, and some of the issues with sensors. And so he's going to talk about how do we really look at doing UAP research in a scientific way that's really going to get us better or further down the road. And so I think that his experience with Arrow, looking at the videos and stuff like that he did, is going to be very, very helpful. And so I'm anxious to hear what he's going to say as well. There are many other presenters. We got Julian Mossbridge coming back to talk. We've got also Doug Bittner is going to be doing. We kind of had a situation when Arrow came out and put their report out saying that they believe that these things in Aguadilla were sky lanterns. Well, we just had trouble with that because it didn't. Yeah. For example, they didn't even have the radar. They never looked at the radar data that we had, and we weren't sure if they actually even read our analysis that we did, but they came out and put their report saying that they believe that there were sky lanterns. Well, Doug Bittner and another person have taken the task of being they weren't part of that original report, but they're going to go and look at it. And Doug has the capability of doing all kinds of tests and stuff like that with specialized equipment. And he's actually looking at this again, and he's going to give us an update on what he's been finding and whether he can validate one or the other of the reports and stuff like that. So we're hoping to get that kind of independent look at it. And so he's going to do that. I'm very excited about also hearing what his results are so far in that. And so you have just a plethora of other people. They're talking again about their subjects that they're dealing with. Laura Domine is going to be talking about the, of course, she worked with the Galileo project like you talked about. She's been supporting that. At the same time, we've got the discussion about, are you familiar with Beatrice Villarreal and her study about these things called transients from these photographic plates going back to early days of in the pre-Sputnik days and things like that? And there's
the papers, right? That got published recently.
She's been publishing papers, and Steve Gruhl also he's a great statistician, did a lot of work and was able to help her to do an analysis on, I believe, the second paper, and she published that paper with her. And so they're going to be talking about that, as well as there's other presenters that are going to be talking about this transient thing as well. And it's just a fascinating subject, whether what were these objects and what were they doing up there if they weren't, natural astronomical things. And maybe they were natural astronomical things, but we just don't understand it. And so hopefully we'll get to a better understanding of these transients, which have caught a lot of attention in recent times as well.
Hello, this is Ryan Sprague, the host of Somewhere in the Skies. If you're enjoying our podcast, our live streams, and our videos, and you'd like to support the show, there are several ways to help while unlocking exclusive perks. Join our Patreon community for early access to episodes, priority guest questions, exclusive articles, bonus content, and access to a growing community of fellow UFO enthusiasts. You can also subscribe to Somewhere in the Skies Premium on Apple Podcasts for ad-free listening, early access, and exclusive premium content. If you're watching on YouTube, consider becoming a channel member to unlock bonus content, members-only posts, badges, and so much more. No matter how you choose to support Somewhere in the Skies, your contribution directly helps fund our research, our production, travel, interviews, and the continued growth of everything we do here. So, to learn more, check the links in the show notes or the video description. And real talk here, guys, thank you for listening and supporting us for almost 10 years. And thank you for supporting independent content. And I hope you'll continue to join me somewhere in the skies. I noticed too you had Matthew Sudeikis and Kevin Knuth from the University of Albany. I'm from Syracuse, New York, so I'm quite familiar. I think I applied to University of Albany but got rejected, so I won't hold that against him, Rich. But
so it's exciting news. If you're aware of the Nimitz case, Kevin Day started a group called UAPX, and so they were planning to go out in Catalina Island and in that area and to do some studies and stuff like that to help validate that Tic Tac exists. And then it evolved where Kevin Day kind of backed out of it. And then Gary Voorhees actually took over and was running it for a good period of time. And then what happened was Gary had some problems. At the same time, Kevin Knuth and Matthew Sudeikis decided that they were going to see if they could take it and make it UAP Albany X, so I think and so they were pushing for the university to be able to get engaged, and they did get a grant money to be able to go and get that started, or a significant donation to start this effort up in Albany and to carry on with it. So Matthew is going to plan on talking about, basically what happened there and how they're planning to set up and what they're going to be doing. And again, I'm excited about that. And Matthew is if you've ever seen Matthew on a presentation, he is a ball of energy, and it just comes across that way. And Kevin is an excellent presenter and stuff like that. And it's always fun to hear his talks. And he'll be talking about, again, he's pointed out in the past that the speeds of these objects have been tracked, like, on the Nimitz case, it dropped from 20,000 feet to stop above the water in 0.78 of a second. Well, that equates to over 40,000 miles an hour. And so if you could sustain that 40,000 and you could actually increase it, you can get up to interstellar speeds. And with relativistic travel, you could actually be on the, let's say, on the other side of the galaxy in just a short time. And because you're not going to experience time, the more you get to the speed of light, it slows down for the person on board, right? So you could basically have species from all different kinds of planets and things like that coming to us using the speeds that we're actually tracking them in short order. And so that doesn't negate the fact that they can be coming from elsewhere. And distance really is not a factor anymore.
Right. And, that doesn't even, the speed and the distance, like that doesn't even attribute for the idea that the object seemed to know what the cap point was. So then you're getting into more like weird psychic or pre-planned or consciousness stuff. So,
well,
like,
you do. And so you have to, so that kind of indicates that either the craft is intelligent, or and the fact that it knows where to go in the cap point, is that a precognitive kind of like, intelligence? Does it know everything that we're doing, or is it a matter of the fact that they've already lived that history and they're playing it back, or in other words,
Interesting.
are we dealing with time in some aspects, and are these really beings from outer space, or are they, as Dr. Michael Matthews talks about, extratemporal beings that are us from a future time that are actually coming back, or a past time coming ahead? We don't know. We just don't know.
Right.
And so if you look at the different hypotheses associated with with these things, whether they're extraterrestrial, or whether they're us from a future time or something of that nature, or they are a mixture of all these different things, or whether they've been here throughout our recorded history and from the past, we just don't know. We don't know. And we've had life on this planet for like a long, long time. And if anybody from somewhere else stumbled across this planet and saw that there was life on it, well, let's just hang around and observe it, and let's use the ocean for our base, and we'll pop in and pop out and keep checking on things, what's happening with the ants up there above us, and then pop back into our water and hide them a bit more. But so we just don't know, Ryan. It's like one of those things. It's not like you had a license plate on the back of the object. You could say, well, this one's from here,
Yeah.
we don't have that, and I wish they
Totally.
did, because we could really figure this out pretty quick.
Right. Well, and you guys are trying, and I love
Yeah,
that. And I love this idea of bringing the scientists and the government together, because
yeah,
what's the point of doing it
right.
compartmentalized? You're never that's always the problem with, these whistleblowers that have come out and
Yeah,
stuff saying,
exactly.
"Yeah, we didn't even know what the guy next to us was doing. So how are we ever gonna like figure this all out?" Or even if you want to go back to the highly controversial Bob Lazar story, whether you believe the guy or not, he
Yeah,
said the same thing. We were working on the propulsion, they were working on this, and we never met to
yeah.
discuss the different data points. So yeah, I love this idea of you guys coming together with everyone.
Yeah, it's very important. And to your point, even when I was working with the Army and stuff like that, and our research and development centers and stuff like that, you'd have in this building different rooms, and this room doesn't know what's going on in the next room, what's going on in the next room, and you don't talk about those things, and they're all individual classified projects,
Right.
separate, and so there's not a collaboration going on. And so we've been encouraging collaboration for a long time, and so that's what we're about, trying to promote the collaboration, and because nobody's got the answers. Let's all work on this together. Let's figure it out.
Exactly. Well, hey, you've also got my good friend and colleague Micah Hanks, the master of ceremonies. So
Yeah,
that
Micah.
will be entertaining, as
Yeah,
sure. I'm sure of
Micah
it.
is
So
entertaining. And he's been a great addition to the conference.
yeah.
Initially, I was doing the hosting and stuff like that, and I was kind of like a one-man person that was trying to do all the conference kind of things, running it, having it, and coordinating it, and everything else. And so I was just glad we approached Micah, and I made that recommendation, and he accepted, and I thought, wow, this is great. And so for, I think, the last three conferences we've had Micah, and it's good to have him. Just great.
Yeah.
He's really an astute individual that knows a lot about the subject, of course, and he's just very personable. So I was just glad that,
Absolutely.
yeah, that he's going
Yep.
to be our moderator again.
I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, I guess kind of the big question for us, I'm kind of close to you guys. I'm in Nova Scotia. You're going to be in Toronto, but for the rest of the world, Rich, is this going to be online as well,
Yes,
or is this strictly an exclusive? Oh, okay.
it is
What?
virtual. In fact,
Oh,
the
cool,
last
cool,
several conferences have been what they call a hybrid conference, where you have in person and virtual. So
nice.
we've got virtual parties around the planet that are coming and attending. Uh, it's like, I think, $75 for a virtual seat, and you get basically 3 days of talking about UFOs and and access to the presentations. Plus, you also have a situation where you can go back and watch these things for up to 3 months. So, and the tool that we're using is called Huva, and it's definitely a award-winning kind of thing. It's an incredible thing where a lot of people go, and you can network. People are already in there having conversations with each other. from around the world and talking about, well, how did you get into this? What did you do? And, and so it's kind of a situation where, they're all having a good time with it. And, but we're definitely, it's a great tool that you can go back, converse. We have networking sessions that we're doing with everybody, and it's really neat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, where can we find the conference, Rich?
So at the bottom of your screen, you got the word explorescu.org. So start there. Just go over there. In fact, all of our publications and papers and our newsletters are up there on the site. You can go in and see those things. And then there's links to all the YouTube, as well as links to other kinds of things. You can contact us through that page. There's a page up there called Contact Us. But if you go up there, you'll see a link that takes you over to the registration site where you can learn a lot more. You can see the presenters, you can see the agenda, and just, take it from there and just sign in. And we'd love to have you. I think you'll be surprised at how excellent these conferences have been, and they've been well received. So
Yeah.
Anyway, check us out.
I've heard nothing but good things. I'm hoping to get there one year, but it's so cool that it's online too. I'll definitely be attending online. And that's July 25th. Is that when it begins?
It actually starts on the 24th. So
24th. Okay.
we're a little bit under a month now out. July 24th, 25th, and 26th.
Got it. Cool.
And
we'll have,
it is
like
in
you
Toronto.
said, in Toronto, Ontario. Got
Yeah.
it. We'll have all the information below for that. But Rich, I'm not going to let you go just yet, if that's okay. I've got a couple listener questions. Is that cool?
Sure. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
cool.
Awesome.
I love it.
One of them comes from me personally. Not that I haven't been interviewing you already, but I got to know your thoughts on all this stuff that's just dropped with War.gov, their Pursue initiative. Like, we went through, my co-host and I, Suzanne, every video, every file, every audio file. And, there was some interesting stuff in there, but I will
Yeah.
say a lot of the videos were kind of a letdown for us in the civilian world, at least, because we don't really know what's going on. There's no
Right.
information connected to these things, no metadata, nothing like that.
Yeah.
But for you personally, what have you made of these 3 tranches or batches that the White House and War.gov have dropped? And did anything really stand out to you, being what you guys do at the SCU?
So, yeah, I mean, we were first very hopeful that we're going to get something here, and of course, it ended up being like, imagine me working at the base and somebody saying, let's take what you have in your drawer and let's put it up on the internet. So everybody was like cleaning. It's like cleaning out your drawers, and anything that had the word UFO or UAP in it is suddenly going to appear into this collection of stuff, right? And so it's a hodgepodge of a variety of things, including memorandums from, and dating back to 1950 something or 1940 something. And usually it's about things that we already knew. It was not for researchers like us, it was like old news, and just like the transcripts from the Gemini missions or something of that nature. Again, old news. Nothing that's revealing anything like that we didn't already know. And, we were hopeful that we would see something that we didn't really know. And of course, I personally, working in the DOD and stuff like that, like I did, I knew that the good stuff might actually be with a defense contractor, and it would never be subject to this FOIA or this release at all, because a contractor or a company doesn't have to abide by what the president says in terms of dumping out their drawers, right? So what you're going to get is just a bunch of memorandum and this and that type of stuff. And then Arrow decided to drop its videos. Well, it had a collection of these videos from the Air Force and these different organizations and things like that, which it had received, had not had even time to be able to probably do a proper analysis of all those cases and things like that. But yet they went and put those things up there online as well. And if you look at them, there's a few of them that are very, very compelling, but others are just, it could be anything. It could be a balloon. It could be some other aircraft. You just don't know, and then you're looking to be able to, like, we're looking for the metadata, like you pointed out, and you see these big blotch squares all over the screen of the video, and
Yeah.
they're cutting out, maybe the GPS location, or they're cutting out, the fact that it was using black as hot in the IR or white as hot. They're cutting out all of the critical data, even like the date or the time, and you're going like, okay, well, this is not helpful to anybody that seriously wants to evaluate these things. And so, I think for the most part, we're all pretty disappointed. It's been a disappointment for us. Again, we're hopeful that there's going to be something, but there's nothing there. And so, it's almost, to us, it's more like of maybe a political game where I get some points or brownie points because I released all the wonderful files on UFOs or UAP, but it wasn't in any specialized order. It's just like me dumping it and saying, here, you public, make up your mind with this stuff, as opposed to what we would hope would be that the government would give us some clarity around all this stuff, right? So you're not getting any clarity from the government. You're just getting a hodgepodge of empty files that are being posted up there. And, some of these things were classified at one point and they declassified them or something like that. And they stripped off the information and stuff like that. And again, it's just very frustrating because, you know where I'm at, right? And yet I actually say that I looked at classified systems at the base, and I saw some classified videos that have yet to come out, by the way. And so, again, you're wondering, are these things going to ever appear or not? And there are some that are extremely clear, and there's others that aren't. And so, it's the problem you run into, and what do you make of them? And for me, the other thing, Ryan, is that it's kind of a disappointment to watch how some of these releases from Corbell and Knapp, they end up right up there being shown by the politicians at the hearings. But where's the analysis you did before you came to the conclusion that that was UFO? And how did you know that it was not an IFO or an identified flying object, that it was something else? And now you're putting it up in front of the public and everybody else and the politicians, and they're believing that this to be something that it's not, and we can come back and embarrass them later because we find out that it's really something else. So that's not the way to approach it either, and so if you look at how MUFON did it, we investigate cases, or even what SCU did with the Aguadilla, and we studied them first. We tried to rule out the fact that there could be an unknown before we came out and published or gave our publication out saying that this is what it was or what it could be. And we've done the homework. So that does help you as a citizen to be able to look at that and say, okay, I can accept that maybe is likely and more plausible than, and you've ruled out the fact that it was a bird, a plane, and, and everything else and stuff like that. So.
Yep. Yeah. In the UFO field, especially nowadays, I feel like post 2017, all these people getting involved, they've grown up with social media. They've grown up with texting and all that. Like all of us, we didn't have that luxury. So like you were used to waiting for things. I think they want it now. They want the answers now, but like that's not how this stuff works. As you know, we still don't know the answers. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just like, I think the public would be like looking to say, let's put the Aguadilla video up and just immediately have it out there, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you get into everybody speculating about what it's speculating, this speculation. We don't want to speculate. We want to be able to actually get the facts and determine what we can. So that's why we took a year and a half, studied this thing to the nth degree, got additional information to be able to support it and everything else. And so science doesn't work in the op tempo of the public news media. And so that's, it'd be great if we could be quicker, but you just have to be able to, and it's getting rougher because now with AI, you've got people faking stuff, then you can't even tell the difference between that and the real stuff, So
Good point.
it's a constant struggle, Ryan, and it's going to get probably worse before it gets better.
Mm. I'd love to touch on that, and then I promise we'll breeze through these listener questions, Rich. AI. Now, that is the biggest debate conversation in the world today. Whether
Yeah,
you're an artist and you hate it, whether you're a futurist and you love it, there's many benefits to it, and there's many bad things about it too.
yeah,
We just had I think it was Professor Avi Loeb spoke at this disclosure forum event yesterday. We live streamed it here, and he mentioned how beneficial AI can be in trying to analyze UAP phenomena and whatnot through the instrumentation and all that stuff. Where do you stand on AI when it comes to UFOs and studying UFOs?
So I think it's like everything else. Like the development. You could argue the same points about the having the internet. Well, I mean, people use the
Good
internet
point.
for
Yeah.
good. People use it for bad, right? It can be used in many different ways. Any technology that we develop it has that kind of means of being used for good or bad. It comes down to the individuals and the people and the society we live in and the cultural acceptance of it. But so I think it's because it's new. A lot of people are just not sure of it yet, and that it's. But yet, on one hand, it's going to help support UAP studies. On another hand, it's going to hurt in looking at videos or anything else and trying to develop what the truth is. And so it's got a good or a bad look to it, and it's what you do with it. Now for example, if we take and we get our own technology out there that's collecting our own data, right? And so
Mhm.
if you can imagine me having a camera up 24 by 7, right? And I have it out there for months, and I want to weed through all that data from just that one camera that's been out there for months. AI and machine learning would be able to help us to cull through that whole thing and eliminate the birds, the planes, and things like that that are out there. It can do that. So it can be extremely beneficial for us to cull through a lot of data and come up with just what we want to focus on, right? So that's
Mhm.
a very good thing. And the more we want to build and put sensors and things like that out there, or cameras and stuff like that, to be able to collect that data, we want to have the AI tools and the machine learning to help us out to do that analysis work. Okay,
Gotcha.
so
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
using it for good. Plus, there's the also the incorporation of the fact that you can actually go through and use artificial intelligence to help you to get at least some good information about a topic. If I want to go for a specific topic, I can do that. It's AI is also helping in the medical world in terms of being able to look at diseases and things like that and come up with alternatives that you didn't even think about. So again, it's got positive kinds of things, but at the same time, if you've ever been on a phone call and you're dealing with an AI person trying to get a hold of somebody, it can be pretty frustrating, right?
Yeah.
So AI can have some bad consequences as well because it's either not being used properly or it hasn't been developed. So it's a struggle to see where this world is going to take this thing and how it's going to work and evolve. But again, it's a situation where we just need to go with it, see how it goes, always be looking for how we can apply it in a positive fashion. And it's not actually foolproof accurate all the time. And so again, humans have to look at that and say, well, wait a minute. That's, so I think it's going to be beneficial overall for research and analysis like we do to help us out immensely. So I'm looking at it positively.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. I think if it can help with things in the medical field or the scientific field, that's great. As long as the human always stays somewhat
Yeah,
involved, because the human will make impulsive decisions that could ultimately
sure.
benefit, whereas the AI might not. It's
Right.
looking at it only statistically, and that could be said of many different things. So I agree with you.
Sure.
I agree with you for sure. Well, staying on technology, Rich, our first listener question here comes from actually all of them come from our Patreon subscribers. They get put at the front of the line to ask you
All
questions. So
right.
they were
Good.
pretty stoked. So David Yu on Patreon asks, Rich was very prominent during the UAP summit. How is he now feeling about civilian science and disclosure efforts? Has he noticed any significant changes or advancements in technology that is available to civilian scientists? So, really playing off of what we were just talking about. But
Mhm.
what are you personally doing right now when it comes to the technology that we could kind of, supply for possible UAP tracking or data
Sure.
analysis? Yeah, where does that stand for you?
So the technology summit was a great effort of bringing all these different independent stovepipes together. In other
Mhm,
words, everybody was doing their own shtick. I'm developing my own little tool. I'm going to
mhm,
go out and put this tool out there. I want everybody to buy my tool and go out and do that. And so everybody was doing something independent of one another. Where now what we're trying to do is to again build coalition and support with the technologists to be able to say, let's bring us together. So now we're looking at what we can do to help either help each other or look at what we need to add to those tools that we've got that we're developing, or to think about it in a different way. For example, I keep pointing this out as an example of where technology could support us, but we haven't got it. But does your tool, for example, also look at the acoustics that might be above the human hearing range or below the human hearing range? So the bottom line there is that we're looking to bring technologists together to be able to have that discussion. And it's really working very well because we're actually getting together and we're having routine meetings now to be able to say, okay, well, we need to think about this. The Tedesco brothers, who have an elaborate van that's well, equipped with millions of dollars of equipment and stuff like that,
mhm.
are looking at it, and they're helping have that conversation with some of the other independent people. And we're doing this on a worldwide basis, which is also very good because their reports are around the globe, and while they might not be happening here in the United States, they might be happening in another part of the world, and so they may be having a flap over there going on, and we are missing out on that. So
Yeah.
like the Sky 360 people are over in Europe, and they're helping to get it around in Europe. You've got us in the United States. Ron Olch is helping to get the stuff around the United States and some in Canada and stuff like that. So again, can we get tools out there? And I'm very excited about the fact that we're finally having these conversations and looking at those kind of aspects. And so I'm encouraged by the fact that we'll now get some development that's shared among these different, players, if you would. And we'll also be able to figure out where are those hot spots and figure out where they are, where we can go and send our equipment.
That's
And then the
exciting.
other
Yeah.
the other point of this is getting the data that we want to study now located in a proper database or whatever, one place to go, where now all independent researchers and scientists can go to and log in and get the data that they need to be able to now do effective analysis and studies and collaborating there as well.
Right. Yeah, again, opening up that globalization, as you mentioned, it's not a Western phenomenon, We gotta keep that in
It
mind.
isn't,
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Good
they're
point.
probably having sightings in Nova Scotia right now, or something of
Oh,
that nature.
yep. Shag Harbor Part 2, baby. Yep, it's happening. Oh, here's a good one. Tanya B on Patreon asks, kind of more of a personal question for you, Rich. Do you believe there are other life forms in the universe other than what may already exist on Earth? If you do, how many years away do you think we are from discovering that?
Well, I think that it's a very exciting right now field to look at technosignatures, and we're trying to do that with the astronomy and all of our James Webb scopes and the things we're putting up in space is looking for technosignatures and something like that on other worlds. And I really believe that what you're going to start to see is as we continue to go out there and explore, and we continue to add these technology tools that help us to be able to get more information, that we're likely going to find out that the universe is pretty much teeming with all different kinds of life, and we'll find that out hopefully someday. I believe that also that the objects that we're seeing in the skies and stuff like that eventually we're kind of get answers to them as well. And I really believe that we'll know, for example, if it's a time or space-time kind of like a manipulation that they're doing, we'll be able to see some of that. Or we'll be able to see that they are, like when they do the cloaking thing or something like that, can we make any determination about, are they interdimensional or from another dimension or something like that? I think that we'll be able to find some sort of signatures that will give us some help, even though they don't want to land and say, hi, I'm from here, that type thing. But we'll do that. So I'm encouraged by that. I point out the fact that all the time that there's a situation where if you take a look at the not the techno signatures and stuff like that, but if you look at the life in terms of just how big is the universe, and it's huge. I do this little illustration, but if you took a Fruit Loop, and that's the representation of our galaxy, a Fruit Loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's 200 billion stars in that one little Fruit Loop, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a lot more planets because each of those little stars might have planets on them, a lot of them, right? So take that one little Fruit Loop. Do you know how many of those Fruit Loops you have to put into pools to illustrate the number of galaxies that are out there? 355 swimming pools filled with Fruit Loops would represent the number of galaxies that are out there.
Wow. That's
All right.
great. That puts things into perspective.
That's a perspective for you. And that's
Yeah.
just only the galaxies that we can see. And there's new ones coming in all the time because we're now starting to see the light from those ones that were beyond, that are finally, the light is catching up with us, right? So it's a situation where, Ryan, put that in perspective. 355 swimming pools filled with just these little things called Fruit Loop cereal, right? That are filled from the bottom to the top. That's incredible. So you're telling me that we're the only ones with life on them? I mean, come on. I mean, it just makes it makes no sense.
It doesn't. I'm with you on that one for sure. Awesome. Well, last listener question for you, Rich. And I'm dying to know this one too. This brings us as current as possible. Stephanie H on Patreon wants to know, have you seen the new Steven Spielberg movie Disclosure Day? And do you think we will ever get disclosure?
So I've had that asked. I saw the movie. It was a very entertaining movie. It incorporated a lot of things associated with the UFO phenomena, UAP phenomena, especially on the experiencer side, right? The experiencer side was well put into this whole thing. It wasn't about the object as much as the experiencer, which again, a lot of the aspects to it, kind of like went along with the stories you hear and various other things. But there were also some other, embellishments, like, the guy holding some sort of thing and being able to control other people's minds. That's never been a part of it. But anyway, it's a situation where the big question is disclosure around the bend. Now you have to understand, I've been doing this for 62 years. And I thought that back in the early days that Project Blue Book, when they had the Condon report, that disclosure was going to happen. That's how I had the perspective, that the disclosure was going to happen, and the University of Colorado was going to come out and report the fact that there are objects and stuff like that. It was the opposite, right? Happened for me.
Yep.
So Condon was a letdown, right? And then we go into the dark ages. I call it the dark ages, from that period of time up until 2017. Now 2017 comes out and it's like, wow, that's kind of neat. And then finally you have the government here in the United States at least admitting the fact that UAP exists. And I thought, well, that's disclosure. That's at least affirming the fact that all these citizens that are seeing this stuff are not kooks, and actually are, they're not crazy. They're actually legitimately seeing something, and that should be validating forever. It was validating for me, the fact that I had been talking about UFOs and stuff like that, and people were like, well, that's. But now the government's out there saying that they're real, right? So that's a kind of a disclosure. Now let's go to the next step. Where am I going to say that they're from, or what their purpose or what they're doing here? And when you get into that kind of subject, it's all speculation at this point, because as I pointed out, we don't know what the license plate is. We don't know where they're coming from. Does the hypothesis that says that they're from another time, is that the one that's valid? Or is the one that they're extraterrestrials coming here? Or is it that there's something else, that we just don't understand? And so consequently, because we can't validate any of these hypotheses to the extent we'd like to, we're left in the dark. But do you think that the government maybe knows more and stuff like that? And then the question comes, well, let's hypothetically say that there's this agency that does know it, or something like that. Is the government going to come out and tell us that they've been lying to us all these decades? Is the government going to, so when do they do that? Who's the best person to be able to make that you're going to all believe, right? So would I believe the president saying this? Well, half the public don't believe anything that he says right now, right? So does the Pope need to be able to make the announcement? Well, okay, that might be so who makes the announcement that you're going to get everybody now accepting the fact that there's something like that going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it almost comes down to the fact that, even when you show videos or something like that, like in the movie, they used the videos and stuff like that. Well, AI, and now nobody trusts videos, or nobody trusts anything else, right? So would I believe that if I saw it on TV that they have these aliens? And again, you run into the problem of acceptance. That's not going to happen so easily. And so I really don't see disclosure maybe in the same way that other people do, but I think that's going to take a longer time for us to figure out who they are, what they are, why they're here, what they're doing, before we actually come out and maybe state that. And I don't think that the government's going to immediately declassify that it's got, this whatever, this recovered craft or something like that. I think that they're just going to keep it and too close to the chest. And maybe at some point that they'll decide to do that, but I don't see that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, no, I think, whatever is at the source of these phenomena will be the ones to decide when disclosure happens. I honestly do believe that. So I'm with you on that one. Yeah, it was a very antiquated way of disclosure in that movie with Spielberg, I feel. First of all, no one watches like the nightly news anymore. So that's not going to be the place you do it.
Right.
It's going to be on Twitter and Reddit before it gets to the news.
You're right there, Ryan. It's, again, the biggest part of our population has gotten away from the nightly news and things like that. We don't watch that. We're getting everything through social media, and people are, and so that wouldn't be. So there was a lot of that entertainment, melodrama kind of thing that went on in the show. And I'll be honest with you, I was like, I guess I was a little bit disappointed. And I guess, because I'm very critical being in the subject, like as long as I have been, more so than the general public. My wife loved it. My other family member loved it, and they thought, this is great, but I'm over there. It's like, well, this wasn't right. And why was it that there are only two? Why were these? They dismissed all the other experiencers out there, and only these two experiencers are the ones that went, had this kind of thing.
Right.
It missed for me.
Yep, I'm with you on that. It's a movie. It's a movie. Unfortunately, Well, hey, Rich, we'll always have Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the masterpiece.
Yes, great show, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Well, awesome. Well, I kept you longer than I said, so we'll head out of here. But again, I hope people will check out the conference July 24th, 25th, 26th in Toronto. We'll have links to everything in the show notes, guys, or go to explorescu.org to learn more about their organization and the conference. But yeah, anything else, Rich, before we get out of here?
No, but it's just been great being chatting with you, Ryan. I've appreciated what you've done over the years as well, and I just want to acknowledge the fact that I'm one of those guys that listen to Ryan and what he's doing, and I appreciate what he's doing because again, he's helping to support us getting the information out there on this subject and helping us all to get educated. So thank you, and kudos to what you do.
My pleasure. I couldn't do it without you. So once again, Rich, thank you so much for joining me on Somewhere in the Skies.
No problem. Thank you for having me.